Hi everyone. So today we have Mayank Mohan, who is my school friend as well from St. Francis, Lucknow days, and he is settled in New Jersey, US, and has finished his master's, I think, in AI as well. So Mayank, today we'll be discussing about AI, its future, the hype, cognitive intelligence, and how AI is impacting the industry. So before we start, let's first discuss about yourself. If you can introduce to the audience about what you have done, and then we can continue the discussion.
Thanks, Faraz. I have been. Thanks for that introduction. I would like to make us my sort of slight adjustment to it. I have been developing products which are focused around natural language processing, which is a key area in AI. I'm an AI enthusiast, and I've been involved with a course from MIT, which is kind of geared towards implications. Um, on the top, I am just I've been a solution architect, and I've been into the IT space, and have kind of covered different segments in the IT space. So my primary objective was to understand each segment, ranging from high tech to media entertainment to business insurance, and then right now I'm in the healthcare sector. So it kind of gives a depth and breadth, and then maybe with that I might be able to kind of put in down anything that we learned from the AI field out to there. My primary question when I started this was, where does this all start in, and where does this all position? So I'm happy to talk about it.
Yeah, so I think Mike, let's discuss in first of all with the very basic question of what exactly is AI and why there is so much hype about AI. When I say what is AI, I mean there are many people who want to get into this field, and there are many industries who are also confused about where to invest in AI. So if you can just talk a little bit about this AI and clear the confusion with the audience, it would be very helpful.
Sure, Farah. So right now, as you have mentioned, that there's a lot of buzz around here, AI and artificial
Yeah.
intelligence. Anything that is coined with the artificial intelligence terms kind of starts to gather momentum, and it's pretty much an area where people are, it would be a genie or a miracle toy which can do anything. And basically, in order to understand AI, right now, um, the governments, the important governments, like the key crucial governments in the overall world space, like US, they are putting in 1.2 trillion dollars. They have a plan to put in that much amount of money by 2020. That kind of will be returning in investments which will be tri-folded, like 3 times. Every year there's a 7% increment in terms of investments that are putting in. Why so much? Let's start with a simple definition. Basically, AI is a simulation of human intelligence processes by machines, especially the computer systems. But if you look at intelligence processes, intelligence is kind of something which can be varying from each person to person, right? So how do you gauge intelligence? And then there are some things that you can't do with AI, like emotional behavior, identifying objects, how you handle them. That is something which is still not that niche in the AI field. So what does AI stand for? And I will kind of take it back to the Stanford and MIT professors, the way that simply they describe it. And the way that they describe it is machine acting in ways that seem to be intelligent, right? So that's a very simple definition. Now, if we go back to the history of it, we can kind of trace it into a more better, broader definition. AI term started long back. It was 1950s with the Turing test, and everybody knows about the Turing test. It's a 5-minute, test wherein you talk to the computer. If the computer understands, that it is if it is answering like a human, you pass it. So that's what it started with. But over the period of years, there have been 4 different waves that have come into AI, and that simply defined the AI. The first wave came around, 10 years down the line during 1960s, wherein a person called Steve McCarthy from Stanford, 1961, kind of you know developed the concept of breaking down the problem into simpler problems, a complex problem being broken down into simpler problems, into simpler aggregator problems, and that's where this evolved. That was the first definition for problem solving, and then the second wave of AI came in, which was like the 1970s, wherein there was this team of researchers which was kind of working at Sortlet, which is working around the Mycin, interface, wherein they were trying to develop a diagnosis engine. So they thought that it will be a rule-based set of representation. So if I put it any kind of rules around certain kind of data, I'll be able to derive to conclusions. So that was the second wave, or the second definition. But that was pretty much it at that time. There was not too much technology at that particular point of time. It went into an AI winter around from 1970 to 2010. When 2010, the hype or the boom, the dot-com happened, there were a lot of companies sprang up. That was the third wave. That is went into the machine learning phase. So we got companies like Google, IBM kind of was a front runner there, kind of started out with the simple stuff. Then they developed Siri in Apple, and Google kind of started, developing on stuff. So that was classified as deep learning. That's where machine learning comes in. Machine learning phase kind of started coming into picture and into practice. So that third wave was kind of sufficient enough to define how the AI is. And in terms of the overall holistic definition, AI is basically about architectures that deploy methods that are enabled by constraints and exposed by representations, right? That support models of thinking, perception, and action. So thinking, perception, and action is something what is something similar to humans that we are kind of targeting here. And now, with 10 years down the future, we are thinking there would be a full fourth wave, which will be like a much broader wave, where we are kind of we are already talking about it. The free computing, lots of data crunching being done behind the scenes, and then the concept of perceiving, recognizing, all that kind of stuff is coming in. So that's what is the fourth wave. And the fourth wave is basically different in the sense it will be able to tell their stories. The systems will be able to tell their stories. That is one of the critical things that has not happened. So that is what defines overall how AI is. You would be fascinated to know, as of today, if you look at the human genome and the chimpanzee genomes, there are like only the difference between us and chimpanzees is 1.2% of the genome.
Oh.
That 1.2%, it kind of clearly defines us as human, but nobody is able to explore that fact. And now these institutions with all that information are basically trying to explore all the different possible capabilities. So that's where the real, wonders start to happen, right? So I would say it's kind of a collective intelligence,
Oh yeah. So and collective intelligence, what it is exactly? It is a part subset of AI, or it's like whatever you've described as a fourth bit of AI. Is that also on? I mean, is AI comes under the collective intelligence comes under AI as well?
Right. So collective intelligence is something which has been a concept of which has been an exploratory concept from some time, wherein we have a group of people contributing to ideas, which kind of gives in a better approach to a problem, to solve a problem, right? So now the difference here is, with machines coming into picture, right? Up till now, the way that we kind of programmed the machines, we got the output of it. So the output of the machines was pretty much very, in the terms of a low level, human thinking. It was not even close to a fully developed, child thinking. But that's where it stood right up till now. But with our AI or artificial intelligence coming in, the whole concept has changed, because now you can train a particular, machine in a particular area, and that can further kind of give it the conceptual space to think and
Okay.
design, so that's where the machine or the system gives you outputs. So the concept of collective intelligence is we as humans should be able to work along with the machine.
Okay.
So machine would be doing care of some of the taking care of some of the tasks, and humans take care of some other tasks. And we'll go into the details of it, but the whole idea is about trying to run certain kind of repetitive automated tasks on the machine, and then the humans kind of taking a judgment in crucial areas, and then collectively working together. The important
Okay.
concept here is trust, and that's the question that is an exploratory field, because with all the sampling and all the kind of work that is being done in this field, the systems being able to explain themselves, that's a key point. If they are not able to explain right now with what they are what they are doing, that's a difficult question to answer. And machine learning is one thing which is kind of being heavily has been heavily researched in, and now we are trying to benefit getting the output of that
So
research.
how should businesses take strategic advantage of machine learning?
Sure. So as I mentioned, like the if you refer to the period when from 2010 up till now, there has been a lot of engagement of big companies in terms of machine learning, and in time to gather the data which would be needed for machine learning. But before we go into machine learning, let us define what machine learning is. Machine
Yeah.
learning is basically programs learning from experience. And when you write a program which can actually give you the kind of solutions, that's where you start to get to take advantage to make the program to give you prediction models, or give you actually predictions, or give you a certain level of control on the the proposed or the upcoming solution. So that's what is most important right now.
So, Mayank, just
And
let me stop you there. With what you were explaining, I was just thinking what I have been doing in my work and what we have been learning throughout. So,
right.
when we were studying computers, we were told that computer is a machine. We fed in some program and then it gave us some output. And like I work in the ERP industry, we design some solution and it gives us result. So how all of a sudden this machine learning is new and how it is different from what we have been doing so far?
Sure. So I will kind of try to explain it with an example how we derive at a machine as a concept, machine learning as a concept. Now let's take for example, you're trying to solve an unknown problem, right? That's where it kind of differs, because uh, with a known set of data, we know what the rules around it will be. You can program it, you can get a
Yeah.
defined output. But when there is an unknown set of data, and there's an unknown situation, how does the machine kind of understand it, and how does it kind of represent it and give the solution? So let's take for example a normal case. You have four different games, right? And you're trying to understand a person's liking towards a particular game. Say for example, you can name it your favorite game, like for example cricket, right? We have a lot of cricket going on.
Yes.
And then there's soccer, right? Soccer is as well. Then you have, say for example, rugby, and another adventure sport like skydiving. Or so now you're trying to determine if I as a person, you as a person, are liking game A or B or C, and how much are you liking it? So what do you do? So you try to ask questions. Say,
Mm-hmm.
for example, what kind or genre of the game you would want to go and play out. Are you interested in heavy activity games, or some games which are like more of mind and less of activity? Are you
Mm-hmm.
are you kind of interested in going for games which are like in a particular climatic conditions they can be played, a particular They support more than one players. All that kind of questions come into your mind, and the more the questions, the more better you will be able to answer each question with a yes or a no. And that's
Okay.
where the concept of feature vector representation comes in. So you basically say cricket, and you say, I like this cricket because it's an outdoor game. That's one data point. It's being played with 11 players. That's another data point. So in this way, you've got a set of data points which gives you a positive sum or result for that
Hmm.
particular game. Now
Hmm.
that's called as training set. So with that training data, now you think of something like volleyball, whether I
Hmm.
like volleyball, or baseball, whether I like baseball. So you have answered those questions. Now you put the same question on that data set, and you try to answer that. And with that, you get either a positive result or a negative result. So that's how machine learning picks up. It's basically
Okay. So basically, you're making machine a parallel human or something. So by feeding into all this information,
exactly,
okay, and then it
exactly
works with you like your mate, like your colleague. Okay.
right. And the important part here is this superimposition, like I described in terms of a particular sport. It can also apply to images. So images will be constructed from small
Hmm.
segments. So it can understand each area and see how the images are formed. Right now, Google, you might be seeing, has got something called as captioning system, which can look at the image and see what is going on. Like
Yeah.
for example, if there are a bunch of players around there and just playing cricket, it will be able to know that there are a bunch of players playing cricket, and it can give the caption that they're trying to throw a ball. All that by itself, you don't have to tell it. How
Yeah.
does it
Maybe
done?
the commentators will be the machine in future. They'll be.
Exactly. So there's a lot of scope here. So you see, and there's a lot of scope for things going wrong also. So that's also an important aspect, wherein you've got all the different things that you can do here. You can use assistants. You can basically the most relevant example here with the recent times is a company called as Stitch Fix. Stitch Fix is
Mhm.
basically using the machine learning. So it's basically a company which stitches the clothes for you, and it takes all the different inputs from you with respect to your styling and what are your preferences, and then there's a human expert involved who kind
Hmm.
of looks at that, and then it also takes data from the social engines. So it's able to assimilate all that data and come to put an algorithm and come to a design customized for you. And then they have a guarantee that they will send the stuff out to you and you will like it. So that's, they
Hmm.
don't charge for that. They charge only if you like it. So that's the kind of accuracy that we can go,
And
with it.
Mike, you mentioned in the beginning that you've also worked in the healthcare, or you're currently working in the healthcare industry and using AI. Yeah, are there any examples that you can give? Um, just 1 second, yeah.
Yeah,
Close. Yeah. So I'll rephrase the question again.
sure.
So I was, yeah. So in the healthcare industry, as you mentioned that you worked in the healthcare and you're currently working in the healthcare industry, how give us some example of the benefits of using AI in the healthcare.
Sure. So in healthcare, there's a whole myriad of benefits. Like you're basically coming down from drug detection, the drug interaction detection, to providing care for the elderly, right? So to basically moving on to providing a way to kind of have an assistant which will kind of understand your problem and give you a response. So there are three different areas where
Hmm.
we can focus primarily. Areas where we have got a lot of data. That is,
Hmm.
in the drug industry, you have samples from like the whole inception or start of the the doctor the pharma or the healthcare system. So which helps this computing engine to kind of derive what drugs work best, what drugs don't work best. When you are basically taking a drug, will that map up to your, to your genome? Because you've got DNA sequencing right now, which again is fed to the same engine. So you can specifically have customized drugs customized for your particular, kind of
Body,
DNA,
body type.
right? And your body. So that will kind of give you a better, recuperative uh, um, time frame, and then they will also not have any long-term impacts. So that's very important field. In the similar way, like I would these days a lot of people talk about finance, so that's also another emerging area. If
Mm.
I would like to quote in some numbers, $3.8 trillion right now is like 2 years. This is a like a 2 years back study, but it still holds numbers somewhat similar to that. Right now, that's the amount of debt that currently is floating around in US, and there are 995 billion dollars which are in the floating debt, right? Which
Yeah.
amounts to each person having $6,000 of debt, which they have to overcome. Now the question is, if you're lending out, how do you ascertain if a particular person will fail or not? So that's an area. Now, if you do the regular reporting, it comes with a
Mm.
credit score. So your credit scores, if you're high, if you're low, you're gone. But
Mm.
with all this superimposition and the superimposition using the Hadoop and the big data concepts,
Mhm.
it has been noticed that a large chunk of the low value or low credit scores, but regularly paying people are being missed out, and that's where your revenue generation kind of can be focused to resolve that debt for a
Yeah.
better planning in future. So machine learning has got a varied kind of different kind of areas. Like for example, you have um, the supervised learning, the unsupervised learning, and semi-supervised learning. So unsupervised is you're just feeding it in data like
Mhm.
images, and it's gonna take a guess. Supervised is when a human comes in between and kind of says, okay, this is the right way to diagnose this, right? So
Okay.
if I have a picture, and you'd be amazed, like if I just show black and white stripes, it would kind of erroneously kind of understand it's a school bus, which is not the
Mm.
case, because in here in US, that's how it is. That's where the human comes in, and that's where the collaboration will be coming in. So that's very important to key aspect in the machine
Okay,
learning
great.
phase. And important aspect, another important aspect is the natural language processing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which I was about to ask. So language processing and robotic processes. I think they can improve the business value, but do you know how?
Yes. So natural language processing, as I was talking about assistants, now right now there are a lot of chatbots and a lot of work is going on in developing assistants. You must have seen Alexa, Siri, Google coming with their own Google Home,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, some say that Amazon is ahead of the game. Some say Google is ahead of the game, but it's still a lot of crunching and data crunching is that going on in terms of developing them in a more efficient way. But natural language processing is basically the thing behind this. So it's basically how you understand the pieces of words and put them together to understand the language of grammar. It is very difficult to understand the language of grammar. Just for an example, if I take a 4 year or 5 year old, child and ask and I give them sentences like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, uh, Mary goes out. Mary wants to play, frisbee, and she sees that the weather is good. So if I put in a question back, why
Mm-hmm.
did Mary go out? It's easy for the child to answer right now that she wanted to play frisbee, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's difficult for the same thing to be answered by the machine, because machine has to take in all the sentences
Yes, yes, yes.
and see what is the relation between it, and that's where we are trying to make some progress. There is some progress with simple cases like these, And that's where the natural language processing comes in, because it kind of, so you have got a set of utterances which basically uh, can be processed by an engine using some algorithms which form an intent, right? So intent is what you are trying to get at. So you might be going out and trying to find out, the best cycling, store for getting your cycle fixed, right? But in order to do that, it has to understand that that's what you want to do, right? How easily it understands is what matters.
Yeah, exactly.
Currently,
Because I was
so
watching this presentation from the CEO of Google about a conversation of making a hotel reservation or a table reservation, and how smart
right,
AI was responding to the different set of questions being put through. So it's
exactly.
fascinating, and how we are building these new AI formulas and feeding it into the machines. And
Right. So the thing that you mentioned, the communication that is called as a duplex communication, which
okay.
basically is initiated by an assistant, and the idea is it kind of understands what would be the context. Here, the context is very important, because if you're making a reservation and you start talking about something else, back to the engine, it as long as it knows that the context is to make a reservation, it will be able to bring you back to that context, saying, probably I didn't get that, but I was interested in the time. So then the person will respond. So the idea is to have the conversation, get the conversation closed within, 3 or 4 attempts. And if the conversation doesn't get closed, have it redirected to an actual person. But
Okay.
in the cases, here there are two concepts. The first concept is these things are making calls not only for the reservations, they also make calls to understand if the business hours of the particular shop are changing. Like for example, if there's a holiday, if there's a kind of a local
Yeah.
event,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
might be calling that store and they will be able to give you, oh, my store is not open today. So you kind of are going into that kind of a phase where the system is kind of handling it, and you are getting the latest information there and up to date.
Can you tell me one thing? This is all very fascinating and very interesting. I agree and I understand with all of this. But what my worry is that why are we doing all this? And will there be impacts on jobs? This is something I ask many people. So
Sure.
is it because of the comfort level? Is it because the organizations, they just want to do something new and they're continuously doing and building new concepts, AI and all that. So where is the end?
Good question, actually. So if you look at the whole, you know, uh, the scenery behind the whole, framework
Mhm.
that we are talking about, I think we missed out one concept, which is obviously the robotic part of it. So
Mhm.
uh, a lot of people are kind of afraid, and I'll come to your question on the jobs part, because when
Mhm.
robots come in, people
Yeah.
started having that notion. So before we go into that, answering that, let's see how robots are being kind of put in. Robots, basically, everyone knows, are automated devices which perform physical tasks in the real world. But the whole concept here is of robots, like even automated driving can be considered as a type of robotic process, right? uh, and there are robots being developed to function for you, like they can go out, get into the market, purchase an item, come back. That's the kind of reality
Mhm.
that is being built upon right now. But there is the other kind of things, which is the Internet of Things, which has been hyped around a lot, wherein you're driving and there's something like, refrigerator is talking, to your car, and it says this, I don't have this product. So the car gives you out and a quick notification that, okay, you are out of this product and you're on the way, and this market is in between, so why don't you get it, right? So
Mhm.
those are the kind of things that when we talk about robots, so those, we are not talking at this point about a full-fledged robot which will kind of do everything. That's way
Mhm.
far off. So that's an important correction there. But
Just to add on that, I was recently staying in Singapore, and there was a hotel. So I ordered some food, and then when I opened the door, it was a robot with all the food that I ordered, and there was
exactly.
and accept and reject and all that. And then when I accepted, paid, and then it went back. So it was like I was interacting with humans. So these things are.
Right, right. So that's another form of robots that that are being, built in for a specific purpose. And you said that has some advantages. Obviously, you can have the robot any time of the day,
Hmm.
night. And there are, as you mentioned, there are some places in Japan where they have robots in the front desk also. So you
Hmm.
go ahead and the person, you look like a person, but it's not a person, it's
Oh,
actually a
man.
robot. So that's there, that started. And I would, there's a very, fascinating example of this, where the jobs part comes in, and that's where I would want to go in. Experts always would be humans. And one specific example of which I can give is in Boston, there's a restaurant called Spice, which kind of works around using robots to cook meals. But what they have done is they have taken the expert help, which is a person named who's a great chef, is Mr. Board, and he's a great chef. He kind of gave in the given recipes, and then the robots are cooking the meals are very cheap, like
Uh,
an average meal costs like more than $10 these days if it's a healthy meal. It's like $6 or $7, right? That's the
those
benefit factor.
robots, did they replace the human chefs or human cooks, or was it a startup where he started with robots?
So he started with the human. Now the chef was basically telling the robots how much to put in each of the ingredients, and he
Mm.
made some of the dishes initially, and then the robots learned gradually and were able to make all those dishes. And
But those robots, they replaced cooks, man. You know.
so so that's where my the thing here is, the takeaway here is that
Hmm.
the jobs will always be there, but there
Okay.
is a certain kind of upskilling that has to be done.
Okay. Okay.
So, so if we look at 2019 and compare it with 1890, right?
Hmm.
1890 had agricultural jobs 40%, right?
Yeah.
Right
Correct.
now, how many
Yeah.
are there? 2%. But
Yeah.
what kind of jobs developed in? You've got the social boom. You've got the dot-com boom, which developed the app developer, social media expert, data scientist. All that kind of jobs started coming in, right?
Maybe
So
we'll be needed to just work 2 hours a day and then paid the same amount which you get again.
right. So the idea is a so let's take an example in terms of the healthcare space itself, right? And the clinical space. So uh, earlier the pharmacists were kind of totally managing the pharma sector, but now with AI coming in, you might be seeing pharmacists kind of doing some kind of diagnosis, right? So
Yeah.
because
Exactly. Yeah.
you've got you've got the machine doing the basic preliminary diagnosis for you,
Hmm.
and then you can have the pharmacist having to choose from a set of results that it gives in and says, okay, this is 90% this case, and there's where the upskilling comes in. The pharmacist can take that role. Doctors can take in a role from a surgeon's point of view, right? Like they're specialized, right? So, and then there are experts. There are particular diseases that only key doctors would be knowing. So is these are the two, like, most probable in the kind of healthcare space. Now, if we go back to another interesting segment, which is the lawyers, right? There are
Mm-hmm.
so many cases as of today that don't reach the court because there are not many lawyers kind of handling it. They don't have the time to look at each and every kind of material, and that's where the natural language processing, the syntax parsing, and sentiment analysis comes in into picture, because it can scrape through the document and say, okay, this is a logistic you know reasoning, and this is what it's talking about, and to give the lawyers what it's talking about,
Mm-hmm.
what it entails in just a two sentence, and whether it will be a good document or not, because you have to fill in a form when you start with and you have to
Correct.
put a lot of data, right? But that whole process is so lengthy, and with the
Hmm.
person reviewing it, it's kind of, you know, it takes a lot of time. So that's one aspect. Now
Hmm.
apply it to mergers, acquisitions. Companies
Hmm.
doing the mergers are kind of, you know, they have a lot of solicitation in between, right? When you do the mergers, when you're acquiring a company, you just
Hmm.
have a clause that after acquiring the
Yeah.
company, be independent, and that is where these kind of machines will be able to parse it and will be able to help. So
Yeah, so
that's
I think the question that I've asked you earlier, why are we doing this? So you've answered it very nicely. Like we're actually in a way trying to fill the gaps of industries where there's a load of pipeline building up. There's a load of data which we're not able to process. A lot of work which we were not able to complete, and now with the help of AI, we will be able to complete it. So this is one of the biggest, I think, driver in AI and these technologies. You know?
right. And the good thing here is like, if I just talk about clinical savings, right? That's around $150 billion is the amount of savings that we are expecting by 2026. That's the
Hmm.
prediction from the Forrester and McKinsey report. Um, and right now, with what is the current trend, 47% of the firms are talking about adapting AI or focused AI. You know, in with having their organization having at least one AI capability. And 20% of them are using AI in their core processes, part of the business, right?
Hmm.
There are 30% that are looking to piloting AI in one way or another in the next year or so. So there's a lot of hype going on, but there's a lot of actual, potential, result-based analysis that has been done, and companies are kind of allocating their budget. A 10% of budget of every company goes into AI on a definite scale. And what is the value generation quotient, you might ask? Okay, manufacturing and risk analysis, 41% the
Hmm.
value generation quotient from this field, and then marketing and sales have 37%. So it's a good. I would not say it's a very good, but it's a good generation quotient. The adoption, most of the firms right now are having like a 47%. There was a survey conducted, and most of the firms have this. They said that they are not having a clear adoption strategy. That's
Okay.
that's where the thing comes in. And then the second most important point is like, how do I what fields or what areas I adopt for AI. So
So,
that's another.
I'm just conscious of time, and because the discussions were so interesting, I think it's slightly run ahead of time as well, or out of time. So, but before we wrap up, I have one or two last questions.
Sure.
Um, we have discussed about the positive things about AI and how companies are transforming and how it will help the industry. How about the dangers of implementing AI and what are the ethical norms like an adaptation and the primary focus points? So I was watching some videos and then there are drones being created and then there may be robots landing into other warfield and then so those are some of the dangers about AI. What do you think?
Right. So that's a good question, because ethics plays a very important role
Hmm.
here. And as I said, the way of gaining trust is basically the machines kind of giving you a trust quotient factor. But when we talk about ethics, uh, the important stuff here is the data that you are dealing with.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
there's a kind of bias that can come in if the machine has programmed the data with negative consequences. You might be tending the machine to take negative decisions, or decisions which don't
Hmm.
kind of work in your favor. And just imagine a simple scenario wherein you have a machine which is serving as a robot, and it kind of knows how to break in the security and
Correct.
start to starts to steal information and send it out, right? So
Mm,
that's one scenario. So security and governance is a very important factor here,
mm,
and ethics in terms of training the data and detecting when where the data training is not giving a result, and that will come in when we are doing the right labeling and we are doing the right kind of logging. So there was a good quote that I heard from someone. It was anything that moves, just log it, right? So so data in terms of AI, you have to do 10 folds of logging. You have to have the data points in an accurate way. And that's where the security, I think, is kind of beaming in. If you look at AWS and Amazon security, they are kind of looking at automating most of the parts, but then logging in such
okay.
a way so that you can get immediate insights into those areas where there can be a bias associated.
Okay.
So and then there is a international association which kind of works on some of the rules. Like for example, when
Mm,
you decision for yourself, you are like if you have a medication in process and you don't want to reveal it, that's up to you. But when
mm,
machines start to place or do actions for you, there might be a point where you would want to set a level of
yes.
input, and there are some points where you don't want to set it. But
Mm,
right now the data sharing and data content management is a very tricky space. So the idea is to have some decisions being taken by the machines, but then have some of the decisions which are taken by the individual humans be kind of
mm.
completely their responsibility, because security is the most important aspect.
Yeah, if there is an
And that,
international governing body who can control, then it's fine as long as they also follow the ethics. So,
right,
which is good. So I
right,
think it was a lovely discussion. I learned so many things today which I wasn't aware. That's
right. For us,
how,
I just have two takeaways from this whole thing, right? That I can provide to you. Usually, the people think AI will solve everything for them,
yeah.
or they think that it'll be useless, right? I think the idea is it'll not solve everything, and it'll not be useless. The line is
Mm,
between.
mm,
So the strategy to focus on is basically label your data, get into a format, train it well, and then have it derive results from you for your
mm,
particular area. And the three phases to explore, gather
mm,
insights, or have a full blown AI in your place, is important that you have a domain expert, you have a solution architect, and you have an AI expert. So those
mm.
are the key things that I would say would be the takeaways
Oh, great.
from the
I
whole.
think you also working with a lot of startups, and there are so many startups who are doing different things in AI, IoT, and machine learning, collective intelligence, etc. So I think in the next discussion, whenever we possible, we will bring some of these startups and see what they're doing, and then we can discuss about them and see how they are helping the industries to doing different things and improving the nature of work, improving and helping the society in a way. So let's bring
Sure,
that on the table next time. What do you think?
sure, definitely, definitely. That's a very good thought, and
Okay,
yeah, we can explore each area.
perfect. So I think it was great again to have you, man, and it was
Thank you, Faraz.
you after such a long time. So
Right, we have been talking after a long time, and we have to been talking on good topics. So that's
yeah,
uh,
I'll just
excellent.
stop the recording, man.